right, our Facebook Live is just not wanting to load too much Christmas stuff on there, I guess, something. All right, well, good morning, everyone. It is Monday, December 14th at 10 a.m., and this is we think, the final meeting of the Social Services Grants Committee to review this year's grant process and set the parameters to recommend to the council, to the City Council, for next year's process. We have with us, if you would introduce yourselves in order to call the meeting to order, the other committee members.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala, District 2.
Thank you.
Mike Padilla, District 5.
And I'm Karen Hiller, District 1, and chair of this committee. All right, with that, I will call the meeting to order. I see that we've got a pretty good screen full of folks online. If they need to participate, we will move right to approving the minutes from November 23rd. Committee members, you got a small edit from Corey this morning, so I'm going to assume that that edit is considered in a motion to approve. And I would entertain that motion.
Yeah, motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve our minutes from November 23rd. Any discussion, additions, corrections? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 All right, minutes are approved. Moving right along to the 2022 cycle. We have reviewed that in pieces and are looping back around to hopefully go through and do what will be, again, final recommendations from this committee to the City Council. There is a mistake in the word that's for item 3A. That should be outsource rather than outcomes. That's our first item to consider, and I think at this point, item by item, we are ready where it's appropriate to vote on these items. Let me know if you feel otherwise, committee members. Item A, outsource, would be to affirm that the committee supports the continuation of the contract with United Way for the next round. I would entertain a motion. Where there's
Motion
consensus,
to approve. Motion to approve, Chair, on maintaining United Way as our outsourced entity.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion and second to affirm maintaining United Way as our outsourcing vendor for 2022. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Oh,
All right.
Chair,
Yes.
just one comment. Can
Please.
I just want to say, United Way, you proved me wrong. It's just, you guys are good. And, for this being the first time on this kind of committee, along with you guys and, my two other folks on this committee, has, I think, challenged us all to be better, not only in the way of customer service, but thinking outside of the box to how we can work together moving forward. So I was ye of little faith, and I just want to say that that's changed, so thank you.
Thank you. Mike, you have any comments before we move on?
Well, I would echo those comments, except for that I had full confidence in the United Way from the very beginning. I've worked with them before. I've worked with some of the agents in the past, and I'm pleased to see that we've come to this point. I'm very happy with the outcome. I do agree that it does make us a little sharper and better, and it's always to have somebody else working with the city and not just assuming that we have all the answers, because I think United Way have brought a lot of perspectives, discussion to this. So I appreciate all the hard work, and I appreciate all the agencies who have stayed with us through this process to make sure that their concerns are addressed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Padilla. And I will echo in a little different way those same thoughts. Obviously, we made a choice through the recommendation of last year's committee, to their credit, to make a change. It's costing us some money, and that's always a consideration with any of us, as we know. But that outside perspective has been really helpful. It seems like it has gone well. I'm excited about some of the conversations we had about engaging agencies citywide and growing in things like just networking, collaboration and improvement of services that we've talked about in the course of our work this year, as well as fine-tuning everybody on issues like outcomes and how to plan and manage and make sure that the things that people are doing are really of value and are making a difference. And so I too appreciate having you here and the perspectives and the added value. So, all right, with that, priorities. We have a priorities sheet. We have reached consensus on a handful of changes, and and then we have a couple things that have been sort of outlying. So what I'd like to do is go through that sheet section by section. If we need to have discussion or consensus or votes on things that we've not yet, I want to affirm where I thought there was consensus, move through anything that's come up, and then when we get to the end of the sheet, be in a position to, again, adopt the entire priority sheet to recommend to the council. First section on that is the mission statement and the identification of the services that we would recommend support with city funds. There are no changes on the mission or the list. The one tweak, which it seemed very important, was to insert that in the mission statement that it be outcomes-based, quality, cost-effective social services, and so on. And there was consensus about that in the past. Is there any question or suggestion from the committee on any changes to this section? Otherwise, we'll move to the next one. Social services grant detail. We had a lot of discussion about minimum and maximum grant amounts, in particular, whether a minimum amount was a minimum award or a minimum request. Thank you. Hopefully everybody else couldn't hear that big hum. And the consensus was, after much discussion at the last meeting, as we understood it and as Corey has marked it on this sheet, that we would say it's a minimum request, but therefore would allow, depending on how the math and the number of the competition went, would allow possibly some final grants as the scale went down at less than 10,000. I think there was consensus by the end. Any discussion on that item? Okay, and Corey or Brett, whoever would answer this question, has that been synced up with what the application itself would say yet?
Yes, we will sync it up once all the decisions are final. Then we'll get all that document over to United Way for them to make the changes in easy impact.
Okay. I'm seeing some nods from the agency heads, so they've been following. I just can't tell you how much I'm glad that this is meaningful to you, all of you from the agencies, and it's affirming to us that we're on the right track and that we're hearing from you if we've missed something. Okay. Then we had just to clarify, Corey has checked the minimum request on both the 10 and the 25. So that had come up as well. So, all right. One that we have discussed but I'm not sure have consensus on yet is the issue of whether we would continue the grandfathering. Two reasons for that, for consideration anyway, would be special treatment over and above other agencies for those particular two. The other thing is, as people's scores have gone up and as there has been some inflation and so on, assuming that we will get to what our total recommendation of dollars is to the city. That has remained static for the last few years, and budgets certainly are tight. If we leave that the same, as we discussed last time, we could end up pushing a couple more agencies out of funding. There was some vision that could and maybe should happen with the system that we have set up, but just want to throw that out there. Right now, the language that we have on this sheet sustains the Shawnee County Medical Society, whereas the maximum request is $25,000 for all the other programs. It would be a maximum request of $50,000 for Shawnee County Medical Society and $35,000 for Positive Connections. Councilwoman Bugby.
Chair.
Yes.
Okay, and in discussions that we had on this, I think I had talked, I have 5 people in the household right now, all taking up Zoom space in my computer for some, and so I'm limited on what I have access to right now. I have grandkids here. What I'm looking at in my iPhone is that 50,000 and then 35,000, but I recall, I'm sorry.
You're doing fine.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. The pluses and minuses of working from home.
I've got to chair Public Health and Safety this afternoon. We're talking about broadband and whether it's really enough with everybody working from home. This is the for real interface.
I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
When the mailman comes, we try to keep them at bay, but I apologize. I lost my train of thought now. Okay, I thought at one point, does this for the Positive Connection show the reduction that I had been suggesting? I don't have all my paperwork here. It does not.
It does not, and so what we've got is a total of $35,000 that's being guaranteed to them over and above what others would get. We could talk about them together or separately.
My feedback at this point is that the Shawnee Medical Society would stay at the 50,000. I think that I had mentioned before, perhaps reducing the 35, down to 20. I realize that they do a lot, Positive Connections, and I still think that they need to stay in this, however we're going to word it, grandfathered or whatever. But I think there should be at least a reduction of $10,000 after hearing their presentation. Obviously, that could change again, next go around. But the other thing that I think, and maybe this is just for my own edification, is that I think it would be beneficial to put in a sentence in there that in that same area about having to meet all of the regular, outcomes and go through the process, however you would want to word that, because for folks that aren't familiar with how this process works, I think that it can lend a lot to interpretation. So putting that in there right off the bat, I think would be helpful as well. So those are my suggestions, Chair.
Thank you. To clarify, both of these agencies do go through the process and are scored and so on. Are you thinking that Positive Connections would not fit our priority list? Because if it doesn't fit it probably shouldn't be there at all, actually.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't fit, and I still think that it should be under that, however we're deeming it to be protected. I just think that, because of the small number, to me, that it serves, and I understand food bank issues, aren't coming into play in this, but after the presentation and us doing quite a bit of talking, I think that they still do deserve to have that status that they're in. I just think that even just seeing how much of the impact it would be with the reduction of 10,000, because I just believe at this point that that's too much.
Okay, let me try something to help you along maybe with this, is that if an agency, some years ago, a prior committee and council decided to make some changes here and to quote grandfather. The only element of grandfathering was to guarantee that they could compete at a higher dollar level. And so I think what would solve what you're suggesting is that they'd simply, if they were simply taken off that list, they would still be an eligible agency like everyone else, would compete for a maximum of $25,000 like everyone else, and would get their award based on their score. Now, if you
No,
were wanting to...
That I don't agree with. So
So you're wanting to guarantee that they would be funded no matter what their score?
No, to stay where they still have to provide all the outcomes, go through the application process. I'm
Right.
just saying, I think the 35, after listening to their presentation, and obviously I still have to do an on-site visit there, of going down to 25. Now, if that kicks them out because that's not enough for them to be in this protected segment, then I don't want to put them just out there in the regular. They have to, take the chance where they wouldn't be able to get funding. I know this doesn't guarantee funding. They have to meet all the requirements. I'm just saying the 35 seemed a bit much to me, and I was thinking about going down to the 25 mark.
I guess just to clarify, and I know this is kind of new ground, everyone else is grandfathered, if you will, at 25. Everyone else is eligible. Everyone else is grandfathered, if you want to call it that, at the 25 level, and can compete every year, turning in their outcomes, their outputs, their performance, their board, their budget, and so on. Everybody's the same at 25. And they had all of those responsibilities
Right.
as well. So if they go to 25, they're simply in the same guarantee level as everyone else. There's no other element of preference that the grandfathering gave one of those agencies before.
And the guarantee that this gave was it gave them the higher amount,
Correct.
the
That's all.
$10,000.
Yes, and that's all.
That's correct. Then I withdraw
Okay.
and just leave it the way it is.
I will put out there as the chair, I'll not make a motion, but I said last time that it's with a great deal of reluctance, but looking at the dollars and the fact that every single agency that we have works really hard to provide services, and they're all equally, to me, valuable, every one of them. That's why we're funding them. And they also have people who volunteer for their organizations, and also they raise money, and often the people who donate also, or their services, serve on the boards and serve as volunteers, are also donors. And again, I believe in all of them, but I'm not sure that with what we're doing that that we should favor any particular one over the other. So I would support, if anybody else does, taking the grandfathering out altogether. Because we will lose other agencies, likely. Just the math. People are getting better and better at filling out those applications, and just doing the math with the formula that we have, we will lose others. That said, if there's not a motion to drop the grandfathering on one or both from either of you, then we will leave it as it is and move on.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to quickly say I appreciate all the questions that Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala has been asking us, in particular about this particular item on our agenda. I think it's good that we had the discussion. And I personally appreciate the fact that she has withdrawn her initial request. I think it's a move that we'll see how in this second year around, how it may affect others. The chair suggests that we'll lose other agencies. I'd like to see a year happen and to see if in fact that is the case, because the next committee can review this at that same discussion. But I do appreciate Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala's focus on this, because it brings the conversation to the next level. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Related to that, and I'm just going to throw this out, if there's an interest in conversation, we do have three or four agencies that actually get more than one program funded. And so their net per agency exceeds $25,000 and even $50,000 in some cases. Now, I examined that. Again, this is a matter of spreading the wealth around, if you will, and cost control. In some of the agencies that have more than one program funded, some of them have popped in and out over the years based on their scores. Just if there was any interest at this point in having a maximum dollars per agency considered. Hearing
Chair?
that. Yes.
Thank you. I think that that's something that maybe I'd be open to really honing in on next year. How long is our committees? For 2 years or one? Sorry.
They're 1 year, but you can re-up.
Oh, re-up. Okay.
Seems like maybe this committee would want to continue another, but we'll see. Yeah, okay.
Okay. So that, I think the only other concern I have when we're talking about the agencies, I think that we had talked one time about some type of protection or whatever we may want to call it for our senior centers. I don't know if we're going to talk about that today or if that'll wait till next year too. I'm open to either way, but I know that, we're getting really close to the end of the year, and I think every single thing that we're doing is making this better, right? And so it just may take more time to get it to the best. So
I did not have that one on. We had discussed it quite a bit and did not go, when it got to a point where we also were realizing that there were other ways of delivering services and talked about the fact that there might be an opportunity in this coming year for more discussion about senior services, and that there are essential services that aren't coming from the centers, and there are new models with COVID and so on. And so I was not expecting us to do that, but more give it a year and let United Way work in the community a little more as well. But this is your chance if you want to do something right now. Okay. Uh-oh. It was telling you it needed to reboot.
Yeah, I pushed later, so it shouldn't be restarted.
Okay.
This is a total one day right now. It said it needed to reboot, and I pushed.
The idea of where I think there is consensus that the language, instead of saying new untested programs, yes, would say no, and with no set aside, which there wasn't before, and instead language that says an agency program must be in operation for 2 years prior to the date of submission, which, as we discussed, would make that program 3 years old by the time it ever was funded through this source. Just want to double check that that's settled, and sorry, you guys are zipping around on the screen on me.
Sorry. I had to reconnect to the.
Okay,
There you
I was just making my excuses for my head bobbing. Okay, so any consideration, reconsideration on that one? Otherwise, we'll keep moving. All right. If we can step down to the bottom first, and then we'll go back to the dollars. The last section, we deleted language about new programs, but left the formula for how the allocation amounts would be calculated once the scores were done. So, I think that was settled. Just checking to see if there are any comments or reconsiderations on that. If not, last but not least, the dollar amounts have stayed plugged in at the dollar amounts that they were for 2020. We've not maybe made an assumption about that, but not discussed it. Expecting to leave them as is. I'm seeing nods from Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala and Councilman Padilla. Okay, with that then, we would have achieved basically consensus on all of the items, and I'm open for a motion to adopt and forward to the council the recommendations on this priority sheet as written.
Motion to approve, Chair.
Second.
Motion and second. Last chance for any discussion. If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right, ready to go. Move on to the calendar. We got a reissue. There were 2 pieces outstanding that have come up in the course of discussion. So I just want to double check those. The application cycle got plugged in at the cycle that was established just this year, running from April to July. In the past, that cycle has run from February to May. So I just wanted, since it's simple enough and timed for everybody to know what we're going to do anyway, was there a preference on the part of United Way or the city staff as to which of those three possible cycles would work best? I think what Corey did was simply put in what we had done in 2020 for the coming one, but that really wasn't a new rhythm.
Chair, I, as a city, our division doesn't have a preference. It's really United Way call on that.
Okay, United Way, and I also would like to open it up if there are any agencies that could give us reasons why one or the other is better. That's good too. United Way, any Any thoughts on how this fits, especially with your rhythms, which we aren't as familiar with as our own?
Thank you. I had that open and have lost it. So give me just a moment here. I had that document up and I'm not sure where it went.
Well, it got delayed in part because of our getting started with this new relationship this year. And so that was fine, and it actually worked out okay. In the past, I think the reason it was done from February to May was so that that allocations process was done before the council even started working on their budget, so that it'd been reported in and was pretty solid, not emerging midway. But either way, we're doing the recommendations for the funding amount right now, and that will go to the council in January and be set in terms of the dollars, either way.
So I guess I don't have that. I had the priority areas. I thought it was at the bottom of that. My mistake. So the 3 areas, or excuse me, the 3 different cycles,
It's the timeline
the timeline.
that we're talking about.
Sorry, I'm not able to pull that up.
That was sent also the resend on the set this morning.
Pieces were, okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
We had, so you had a piece that was just sent this morning?
Corey updated the sheets and sent them out just this morning, yes.
Okay,
So an attachment to an email from this morning.
that's right. I did see that come through. Thank you. All right, here we go.
Tawny has commented in that there's no preference by community action. If any of the agencies have a thought, using the chat while Brett's looking would be great.
So as I look at these for us, it's roughly at least the proposal process is very close to our United Way our United Way timeline for both our basic needs and our impact partners, just because we function on the July-June calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That said, Joyce, you can correct me here. I don't know that there's any type of year, I don't know that there's any time of year that it's ideal. Because we have reports coming in from our partners on it.
Right.
Otherwise.
Yeah, as far as this goes, I don't have the timeline in front of me, but what happened last year, it was fairly good timing for us. So kind of how it flowed, it
Yeah, I think
wasn't
that
too overwhelming.
The earlier that we did it, like that February through May is probably best for us, because then you would then transition right into the impact funding and basic needs on the other side of that. So as long as they're not all in the same month, because I imagine that would be hard that's a lot of facilitating meetings that would have to occur in 1 month.
Yeah, for us, that could potentially be 60 applications that we're working on, and during our quarterly reports, even for this year, we'll end up with, was it 57, Joyce? 57 reports that'll be coming in quarterly, so there's certainly significantly heavy load there.
Yeah, we just have to watch out for our panels and that kind of thing.
Right.
So like I said, what we did last year fit very well within our schedule.
Okay.
So you thought that the April to July routine fit?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to double check for you. What that does in simple terms is you've got this committee, for instance, or whatever committee, the council committee reviewing and bringing it in for a landing by the end of the year to present to the council, if possible by the end of December, otherwise in January, and the process gets nailed at that time. In January is when new councils get seated if there's been an election. It's when people rebid for committees, and the new committees start on February 1. And so you've got in here the training for the committee scheduled for March. That could even be February as far as breaking them in. One of the things that we'll get back to maybe, but we had talked, the other thing that's hanging for this timeline is the discussion of outcomes and reviewing how agencies in the past met outcomes and refreshing. That looks like it could be done in the fall, kind of at about the same time we did the senior citizen discussions before, but it also, as I'm looking at it, could be part of that first meeting with the new council committee. So February and March is good timing, perhaps both for the United Way staff as well as for the new council committee to really refresh on that and make sure everybody's clear. Then there would be a gap in that case. The RFP wouldn't go out till the end of April. The application workshop would be held at the end of April. Applications would be due 30 days later, the end of May, from the agencies. So you all would process them right at the end of May. Anybody who wasn't even eligible would get notified by early June, by June the 9th. Then the reviewers you're going to be recruiting reviewers in May, and they will go to work in June, review the applications by the end of June. By then, the council is well into the budget process based on the dollars that were approved back in December/January in terms of counting on those numbers for the upcoming year. So then July 5th, the results would go back to that council committee. The way we've been doing budget lately, except for this year with COVID, trying to have, even though our budget doesn't have to be done, submitted to the state till the end of August, we've been trying to bring it in for a landing and be pretty well done with it by the 1st of July, just then getting updated revenue projections and finishing. So that dovetails in with the council's process. Then having the final recommendation for the actual allocations, likely within the same dollar amount that was originally budgeted, but that gives a little wiggle room if for some reason there's a desire to change. And we go. So if that works, then we'll leave it. Corey did very appropriately put across the top that the dates are subject to change if and when it gets a little closer. There's a reason to juggle this a little bit. It's possible to do that. With that discussion then, we had wanted to plug in that outcomes discussion somewhere. Would there be a preference or thought process on the part of United Way or anybody else about where that would be best located? Because we probably want to put it in that calendar so that it's there.
I'm wondering if it wouldn't make sense to have that discussion like the third quarter. We'd have 3 quarters worth of information to share on. So would that be October?
We had talked about that last time, yeah. Now the council will be the committee will be going into review of the process for the prior year and its discussions on the next year in October and November. So if the place to plug that is to tie that into Actually, it's box number 1 because that planning process is all the way up at the top of that calendar sheet. And what we want to do is maybe just add language up there then that says the Social Service Grant Committee reviews outcomes, receives testimony, develops priorities, blah, blah, blah. If that's the place to plug it in, we can simply stick that right in that description. That would be October. Do you think it needs
I think
to?
I think that makes the most sense for us. I think we'd be able to get you more information at that time, more
Okay.
meaningful information.
And do you think it needs to be a separate meeting, or could it be incorporated into that first review meeting?
I'm not sure, Brett. I'll defer to you on that.
I don't know which of those would be best.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we just stick that in there, what it says is Social Service Grant Committee would say maybe reviews outcomes, receives testimony, develops priorities and a budget recommendation for the next funding cycle. And it says October/November. And so like we did this year, we looked at how many things we wanted to look at and how to calendar that. We could make that September, November, just to put the message in there that people might want 3 meetings.
I think that provides flexibility.
Okay.
And you don't have to have all the meetings, but it provides a little more flexibility.
Okay. That makes sense, Corey and committee members? Just to put those, insert reviews outcomes and make it September, November on the recommendations? Okay.
Yes.
Well, with that, I would invite approval of the timeline sheet for recommendation to the council.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and second to approve the timeline sheet for submission to council. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next sheet we have is the, I think our agenda says the process, but I think that, and it says RFP language. We don't have that RFP back, so Corey, I see that you moved probably the one key item from the RFP that wasn't in the other docs that we approve to the bottom of the scoring sheet this time. Is there anything else that was in the RFP that we needed to approve?
No,
Either-
the
either-
changes that, if I may, sorry. The changes that we made were all really related to the score sheet. So I did update the score sheet for you.
Right.
And if that were to be approved, then we would replace the score sheet that's in the RFP with this new revised score sheet.
Okay.
We did have one question from Joyce, I believe, about the resolution 7580. I said I would check on that. And that is something that we can put in the application instead of having the agencies upload that document. So as long as we have the correct language and I can get that to United Way, we can eliminate the agencies from having to upload a document.
Okay,
Chair, I have a question for Corey.
please.
Corey, can you, just to make sure that I have the most updated information today, that RFP has already been updated, but can you resend that to me?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so our items D and E had to do with the RFP language and the application forms. So we're going to be able to eliminate the 7580 form. And also the RFP language, I'm looking at my prep notes. It needed to reconcile the language about the minimum ask as well. So you'll get that.
Yes, now that the priority sheet is updated, we can again replace that new revised priorities that you just approved into the RFP. So all that you're doing today will help us enable us to create the new RFP for the next year.
Okay. What I was referring to, and we'll get to the score sheet here next, is that there was a disconnect always because the language that said that the it says ECD committee, it needs to say SSG. No wonder that threw me. The Social Service Grant Committee may choose not to recommend any agency or programs, any new programs, or may fund programs with provisos. That language was always only in the RFP, but was very important for the committee to be aware of, and certainly United Way as well. And so what Corey did was pop that out into as a bottom line in the scoring sheet. So that way it can be considered here, and the committee doesn't need to see the whole RFP. So thank you for that. I don't think, okay, and on the applications, Corey, the board participation issue needed to be resolved.
Yes, the score sheet, you will see that the one I sent you this morning does have that reflected in it. It's not highlighted in red because it was already in there. It just wasn't in the actual RFP. It didn't get translated over. So we'll make sure to get that updated this year as well.
Okay. Okay. Okay, and so the certifications issue was just that 17580 form? Okay.
Yes.
There was also discussion of that we really wouldn't be voting on, but of changing the budget part of the application form to get rid of the CDBG column. So that's done.
We will make all the change. We're planning on making all the changes once everything is final. But I have those notes from the last meeting, and we'll definitely make those changes.
Because the duplicate budget requirement, those were the ones I pulled out of the notes. Okay.
Correct.
All right, well, let's get to the scoring sheet then. That's the third of three that we need to move forward. Corey already touched on the changes. We really had, at the one section that United Way was going to work on the language to improve the outcomes section. And it basically changed the language from saying that they are described in detail and achievable to that they are strong and measurable and related to the identified need. And the scoring kind of cascades down from there in terms of moderate and measurable and weak and not related, as opposed to what we had before. It looks to me like that captured what the discussion was. Are there any questions or concerns about that from anybody, committee or anybody else? Okay, then that looks good. And then the board representation that there was a disconnect on is going to be, we're not changing what's in here because that was new language for this year. We're just changing it in the application. Is that right, Corey and Brett? Okay.
Yes.
So this still leaves us with a total of 100 in the scoring. No other changes. Just in case it's new, it seemed new to any committee members, I did mention that Corey brought the language from the RFP over to the bottom line on this score sheet that simply leaves the committee clearly gives the committee the chance to make any changes if it chooses, or to add provisos if an agency's, there's an issue. Any question about that? Okay. With that, then, I would entertain a motion to approve the score sheet. as amended for recommendation to the body?
Motion to approve the score sheet as amended, Chair, and go on to recommend to the governing body.
Second?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any last comments? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All right. I think we have accomplished our mission. Is there anything else we should be considering? Yeah, exactly. It's taken time, but it's been very methodical. I appreciate so much the staff and United Way and the committee and all of you that are observing and that have sent comments otherwise early on. This has really been a team effort and makes a difference. City Manager, with us passing this out today, which agenda do you think this would be on in January?
Probably would target the 12th.
Likely the 12th of January agenda for our report to the council. So watch for that. Anything else?
Chair,
Please.
I would assume, as the chair, you'll offer a document, and I know how methodical you are, that you'll give it out to myself and Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala before it makes its way to the full body.
Absolutely, I can do that. Thank you. It doesn't always happen that way because people just fill out the form and send it, so we can make sure that happens. Thank you. Thanks for asking. Anything else? If not, have a wonderful holiday. Thank you for all that you do. Brett, you're going to be in plenty of time for your meeting. And by the way, if anybody drives by my house, I have the most gorgeous Christmas spray on my door. It's the nicest one I've ever had, and it was LULAC's fundraiser that Kathy handed out the forms for at one of our meetings. So thanks for all that all of you are doing for people at the holidays and through COVID and for your own people as well. We're adjourned.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, everyone. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.